Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Host Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Trinidad and Tobago's opposition in unity talks with other political parties to fight the PNM in the upcoming local government elections. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Friday, 16th June 2023. Details after this important message.
Hubbard's Motor Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Welcome back. The political leader of the United National Congress of Trinidad and Tobago and opposition leader Kamla Persad-Bissessar has called for an alliance to move the PNM from office, and from what we've learned, there's at least one willing party. TV6's Overshi Tawari Rupnarayan tells us more.
Political leader of the United National Congress, Kamla Persad-Bissessar, is giving the coalition strategy which got her into power in 2010 another go.
Tonight, I tell you from this platform that we have been holding discussions with other groups. And I'm letting you know that we will begin further discussions in the coming weeks with any one of the smaller parties who are willing to fight the local government elections together with the UNC as a united force.
Persad-Bissessar, using a biblical analogy, called on UNC councillors and aldermen not to sell themselves for 30 pieces of silver.
At least two smaller parties have approached us. Discussions have begun. Some of my senior members have begun discussions with them. If we can come to an agreement in time for this next local, we will fight as a united force, capable and ready to take on the PNM. But I'm drawing a line in the sand. I will not tolerate any disrespect to UNC members from anyone who wants to come forward to work with us.
TV6 has confirmed one of those parties to be Gary Griffith's NTA. However, when questioned, political leader and former police commissioner Gary Griffith will only say, quote, "Mr. Landate has done so much to destroy and divide this great country. We have seen too much hatred, division, victimization, and intimidation in the last 8 years. Let the focus not be seen as simply uniting of parties. Let the common goal be that of uniting the nation. It starts now," end quote. Despite the assertion of a subliminal connection between the UNC and Watson Duke's PDP, in response to our query, Duke states categorically that he has not had any talks with the political leader of the UNC. Philip Alexander, political leader of the PP, is to host a media briefing tomorrow, Wednesday, to, quote, "reveal an important alliance in the upcoming local government election," end quote. However, in response to our question about an alliance with the UNC, he says joining with the UNC is, quote-unquote, "more lazy politics" and will not solve the problems facing the country. Meanwhile, the opposition leader on her Sangre Grande platform told supporters this is but step one in their final mission to unseat the PNM in the 2025 general election.
There's a percentage of our population who do not vote because they do not feel they belong in the UNC or in the PNM. I accept that. That is their right to choose. They're left unrepresented because they believe their vote will not matter. The PNM will never work with these persons because the PNM only cares about PNM domination. The UNC is the only national party who would welcome them and say, "Let us work together."
Prominent in her speech was the flooding affecting predominantly UNC-controlled municipalities.
The pain today of seeing my constituents and so many others flooded out again is just too much to bear. Children had to go to school today to write exams. The Cape and the CXC flooded out. The Minister of Education is nowhere in sight to tell these children, look, if you could not reach school to write your exam, we will take a decision to ensure you have a fair chance, an opportunity to write the exams. They were nowhere to be found.
Her campaign promises include the scrapping of property tax. Additionally, she challenged the government to come clean on plans to implement a 25% inheritance tax.
I have been told, and I call on the PNM to come clean about this 25% inheritance tax. You know what that means? Your parents pass away, you pass away, you leave a little something for your children or your grandchildren. Before they could get it, you had to pay proper inheritance tax. How long have we been having discussions about this inheritance tax? Come out and tell us.
The UNC political leader promises more secure communities and schools using municipal police and community comfort patrols. She also promises to give more neighborhoods the go-ahead to become gated. Urvashi Tiwari, Rupnarayan, TV6 News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister has given hope of a boost to the country's border patrols with 2 new aircraft earmarked to enhance security measures. Jesse Ramdio of CNC3 News reports.
Expected to fly into the country's radar are
2 new specialist aircraft to replace the ones that we have there.
At a press conference on Monday, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley announced that the recent renewal of discussions with U.S. authorities to procure the enhanced aircraft had advanced. He also underscored the importance of the assets.
They don't only serve Trinidad and Tobago, but the Southern Caribbean, because if there's a loss of Grenada or St. Vincent at sea, there's an emergency, it is Trinidad and Tobago's assets that are immediately called into play as a first responder. Not to mention our own borders, patrolling it from the constant attempt by South Americans to penetrate our border.
Earlier this year, Guardian Media reported that 3 senior specialist pilots had resigned from the Trinidad and Tobago Air Guard, adding to a reduction in assets over the years needed to effectively patrol the borders from the air. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister expressed cautious optimism following a recent CARICOM heads meeting with U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris on initiatives to improve regional security, including the establishment of a crime gun intelligence unit. Dr. Rowley was, however, particularly uneasy with courtroom proceedings.
My biggest concern and fear is the threat currently posed to us by legal actions or supposedly legal action in Trinidad and Tobago, which has put the nation's national security at great peril. I will tell you more at the appropriate time, in the appropriate place.
When pressed further on his comment, Dr. Rowley noted that he was concerned about the dangers posed by actions taken within the country. Jesse Ramdio, CNC3 News.
The Bahamas' Attorney General, Senator Ryan Pinder, gives an update on the position of the government in the case against Sam Bankman-Fried. More in this ZNS News item.
Reuters is reporting that former founder of FTX Digital Markets, Sam Bankman-Fried, wants a United States judge to throw out the criminal charges brought against him following his extradition from the Bahamas last year. In papers filed in Manhattan, New York federal court yesterday, SBS lawyers said they asked the Bahamas Supreme Court to bar the government from authorizing U.S. prosecutors to move forward on the 5 charges until their 31-year-old client has a chance to be heard. The lawyers claim the sixth charge for violating U.S. campaign finance laws should also be dismissed, although it was brought before his extradition because the Bahamas did not consent to it. The attorneys want U.S. District Judge Lewis Kaplan to dismiss the charges or try them separately from 7 additional charges at Bankman-Fried's scheduled October 2nd trial. Our news team asked Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, Senator the Honorable Ryan Pinder, about the government's position on the FTX court case on Monday.
We are doing a thorough review of the matter. We have not come to any decision on the request of the United States. We have sought expert counsel in this regard, and so we continue to review the advice before making a decision. I want to be clear, the last thing that we want is to make an incorrect decision or a decision that is not thoroughly thought through and expose the Bahamas and the government of the Bahamas to litigation matters in the United States.
Revenues and volumes at the Port Authority in Antigua and Barbuda in the first quarter of this year outperformed the first quarter of 2022. The details were disclosed on Tuesday, with tourism and construction accounting for the lion's share of the increased activity at the port. Garfield Burford of ABS News has this report.
Antigua and Barbuda's economy grew by some 8.5% in 2022 and is forecast by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank to grow by close to 9.5% in 2023. Activity at the port is often a barometer of broader economic activity, so I asked the port manager about revenues and volumes so far this year.
The first 3, January, February, March, we saw 2023 outperform 2022 in terms of volumes at the port. In terms of revenue, our revenues were also in line, a little bit ahead.
He says the picture seems in line with a continued rebound following the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic. While he says there has been a slowing seen in June, Telemac expects to be able to provide a more definitive assessment and comparison of the second quarter of this year when it ends this month. What is clear, though, is that the growth in volumes and revenues seen in the first quarter of this year were spurred by the sectors which have been driving the country's economy: tourism and construction.
A lot of it would be hotel originating cargo, hotels. The cruise ships would have brought in a bit as well. But definitely the construction continues to be strong. The PLH project on Barbuda is one of the factors for our continued strong volumes. We've seen some movements on Barbuda with a few other projects that are starting up as well, and that too is spurring on some activities there.
The port manager also tells ABS the port will need additional equipment to optimize the new facilities it now has. He's hoping some of the funds from the sale of the Alpha Nero super yacht can be earmarked for this purpose.
To achieve some of the operational advantages and benefits, we have to now move from just focusing on that beautiful structure and put the right technology and equipment in place to help us to get there.
The gleaming new warehouse, administrative building, and other infrastructure have been bankrolled by a loan from China's Exim Bank, in addition to counterpart funding from the government of Antigua and Barbuda.
Jamaica's opposition leader Mark Golding on Sunday slammed some People's National Party's PNP supporters for being instigators of internal feuds, urging them to get in line and be measured in their speaking. Nika Lewis of CVM Live filed this report.
As the political heat intensifies, leader of the opposition Mark Golding is taking a swing at some in his party bent on creating conflict and confusion. He reminds silence is golden.
We love to chat with one another in social media too much. If you are going to say something that does not take the People's National Party one step further to going to Jamaica House, keep on your mouth and shut up.
He then tackled and countered the message from the JLP that he's responsible for the political campaign against the Prime Minister's efforts with the use of artificial intelligence.
Pressure, I reach them, you know, man, because them start talk pure foolishness. Him claims, say, the PNP are used artificial intelligence. Forget them out. Well, first of all, me not use artificial intelligence. A real intelligence me use. When they bring them full legislation to Parliament, when I bake like a cake, when I bake good, and we have to slice it and dice it and show them it can't work and them have to fix it. A real intelligence we use for do that.
Golding maintains the ousting of the JLP will be entirely to blame on their own actions or lack thereof, citing several shortcomings.
Them a get out themselves by them corruption and them mismanagement and them lack of care for the people and them policies which are failing the people. When we tell them that they must care for the people and cushion the crisis, they don't want to hear we. When we tell them to cap the gas tax at the budgeted assumption price of world oil price, them don't want to hear. Me, I'll draft the order myself under the provisional collection of tax act to cap it for them. Because I know it's going to take them months and years for do that. So I just whap it out myself and carry it down a hero circle to give my Nigel Clark. And I know them don't want to do it.
The PNP president was addressing supporters in St. Catherine at a March Penn divisional conference where he officially endorsed councillor candidate Natalie Ho. Nika Lewis, CVM Live.
The hurricane season is now upon us, so we as Caribbean people need to remember to think safety and be prepared. Avoid venturing outside during a storm or hurricane, especially if there are strong winds. Rooftops and other debris are often blown about and can cause great damage.
I am Eddie Frederick, wishing you a restful weekend. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.